Now today we are going to attempt a super crazy live looping setup. We're going to try and create an 8-track loop station by combining the Boss RC505 with the Boss RC300. If that sounds interesting, stay tuned. Hey, what's up? I hope you're having a fantastic day and welcome back to another video. Now today we are going to do my most requested video here on the channel. For some time, people have been asking me, how can we MIDI sync both the Boss RC505 to the Boss RC300? So we are going to sync the RC505 to the Boss RC300 in today's video, and we are going to create an 8-track loop station. Now, ages ago, I did a video where I showed you how to create a 6-track loop station, and we MIDI synced 2 Boss RC300 loop stations to one another. If you're interested in that video, you can check it out over here. But today we are going to go to the next level, and we are going to take a 5-track loop pedal and combine it with a 3-track loop station. Now we're going to do today's video a little bit different to the Boss RC300 version of this tutorial, and that is because in the Boss RC300 tutorial, I showed you how to also route the audio between both of the loop stations. So this gave you the complete guide essentially in how to combine the 2 loop pedals. Now I don't want to do that in today's video because it's quite complicated, and in hindsight it was probably maybe a little bit overwhelming for people to figure out how to set up the MIDI as well as set up the audio in the exact same video. So if you want to learn how to set up the audio, it's essentially exactly the same. So you can go and watch the video with the RC300, combining them 2 loop pedals, or alternatively, let me know in the comment section down below if you would like a part 2 to this video, and I will do one where we talk about the audio. But let's talk about the MIDI first, because that's the most important thing about this tutorial. So with my experience with both the Boss RC505 and the Boss RC300, it's probably going to be best that we use the Boss RC300 as the master unit, and we slave the Boss RC505 via MIDI to the Boss RC300. My reason behind doing this is because the Boss RC300, it doesn't really receive MIDI information natively. You have to do some very bizarre sort of workarounds, and it's much better at sending clock data, and the Boss RC505's perfect at both sending and receiving MIDI clock data. So that's why we're going to go for this orientation. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a MIDI cable, just a standard 5-pin MIDI jack. You can see it right over here. And we are going to plug this end into the MIDI out of our Boss RC300 loop station. So we'll go MIDI out, and then we're going to go into the MIDI in of the Boss RC505. Once you have plugged in the MIDI cable, what I want to do next is I want to actually make sure both loop stations are running on the exact same patch number. This is just for more organization purposes and kind of my OCD. So one patch isn't on 24 and the other one's on 64 or whatever. So just to make it super obvious that we're running on the same stuff. So we're going to scroll over, just make sure they are in tune with one another. So this one, both on 60, I'll delete out this loop. And then what we're going to do is we are going to dive into the system settings on our Boss RC300. And we're going to scroll over until we get to the MIDI information over here at the end. So you can see we have a variety of MIDI options. Now, if you want to learn about all of these MIDI setting parameters in depth, then check out the links in the video description down below for both my Boss RC505 and my Boss RC300 Ultimate Guide. There's over 57 videos in both of the guides, basically taking you through every single setting on both the RC505 loop station and the RC300 loop station. So a majority of the questions that you will have on how to set these loop pedals up will be answered inside of those guides. So check out those links in the description down below if you want to get the most out of these 2 loop stations. So in order to set up the Boss RC300 correctly, we need to make sure that this MIDI sync is set to internal. So this means the Boss RC300 will run off its internal clock source over here. And then what will happen is this information will be sent across this MIDI cable into our Boss RC505. And then on the Boss RC505, we want to set the clock source to be MIDI sync. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So here I've got my Boss RC505, and we're going to now do a pretty similar setup process. So we're going to dive into the system settings once again, and this time instead of scrolling left and right and scrolling through the menus, I'm going to show you a shortcut. We can just click system again, click it again, and again, and again, until we get to the MIDI settings. So we basically just change through the categories. Now we're in the MIDI settings. We are now going to set up our sync source. So right now it's set to auto. So the clever thing about the Boss RC505 is it has this auto mode where basically if there's a cable plugged in, it will go off the MIDI clock information of the MIDI ports. If there isn't, and there's a USB cable plugged in that's receiving MIDI data, it'll go off that instead. It's very clever at prioritizing the clock source information. So, as you can see, we have auto and we also have internal. So we're only limited to 2 options this time as opposed to 3 on the RC300. Now this works pretty much exactly the same. We've got auto and we've got internal. So internal obviously goes off its own rhythm settings inside of the pedal. And then auto, as I just said, goes off either the USB MIDI information that's plugged into the pedal or the MIDI in and out ports here. So we're gonna leave this on auto. We can then refine this parameter by scrolling 1 over to the right, and this allows us to specifically specify the MIDI sync source. So as I just said, auto works out as it defines whether it might be via USB or whether it will go off what's plugged in here, but we kind of override this inside of this system setting menu here. So you could leave it on USB if you wanted to, but today we want it to be on MIDI, so we strictly only receive clock data from the MIDI in and MIDI out ports on the Boss RC505. So now we have optimized our loop pedal, we can now go ahead and mess about syncing these up. Now, if you're enjoying today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and also consider subscribing. I do 3 videos just like this every single week, and it really does help me out, and it also helps the channel grow. And don't forget to check out those links in the video description down below if you want to support the channel, and most importantly, if you just want to get the most out of your Boss RC300 and your Boss RC505 with my ultimate guides. So if you've set up your MIDI sync correctly, when you click tap tempo on the Boss RC505, it will say master tempo MIDI. And what this means is the Boss RC505's onboard clock is now running via the clock information being sent across the MIDI cable. Then if we put the 2 loop pedals next to one another and we start recording on the Boss RC300, you will see that the 2 tempos will synchronize with one another. So check this out. So you can see as I finished recording on that loop, the Boss RC505's tap tempo began to speed up. And if you look at the 2 lights, they are synchronized between each other. And then when I record on the RC505, you can see it waited to initialize its record until it hit the correct point in the time, and then it overdubs and performs perfectly fine. So there you go, we have now created an 8-track loop station, and we can go crazy and get super creative with this live looping setup. If you want to learn more about settings like this inside of the Boss RC505 and the Boss RC300, don't forget to check out those links in the video description down below so you can get the most and maximize the power of these 2 loop stations. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed today's video, and as always, I will see you in the next one.